So are we ready upstairs?
We're ready.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the November 2nd, 2023 meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along with request to speak cards. A reminder to everyone that request to speak cards should be completed and turned into the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation. For those speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write item 1 on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. Okay, and with that, we'll turn to the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Anderson.
Pledge allegiance to the republic.
And so starting with the agenda, we have General Administration Function, Part 1. Item 1, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Commission. Anything on this, Tanya?
We do not have any requests to speak on item 1.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, correspondence and staff communications from the Planning Commission Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Chair Savon. I just want to make sure the commissioners received the memo late this afternoon from Seamus regarding his item tonight. He'll go into it in more detail during his presentation. I want to make sure everyone has that, including anybody who's here in the audience. There should be copies on the sidewall over there, courtesy of Tanya. And that's all for staff communications at this time.
Thank you. Item 3, disclosure of ex parte communications. Any commissioners have anything to disclose? Seeing none. Okay, moving to the consent agenda. Consideration and approval of the minutes from the October 19th, 2023 commission meeting. Any corrections or a motion?
Let's call for public comment on that as well, please.
On the consent
Yes.
agenda. Okay. Do we have any comments on this item?
There's no request to speak on this item.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Olivares.
Second the motion.
A second by Commissioner Delgado.
Commissioner Wong,
Aye.
Commissioner Delgado,
Aye.
Commissioner Olivares,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Present.
Chair Sablon.
Aye. And that, just a clarification on council, do we need a aye on that one? For Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, if you would like to vote in the affirmative.
Agreed.
Oh, no, I thought,
You
oh,
can also
present.
abstain.
Oh,
They're present.
okay, so,
Yeah, so Commissioner Anderson, if you're not prepared to vote on those minutes, then we'd recommend you abstain from this vote.
Aye. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, motion, minutes are approved with Commissioner Anderson abstaining. Item 5, our public hearings. We have a public hearing regarding general plan mobility element update and bridge district specific plan update. We have Mr. Lackey present.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. This item before you tonight is a public hearing on the general plan mobility element and amendments to the Bridge District Specific Plan. We took this item before the Commission earlier this year on June 15th as a workshop to get feedback from the Commission and from the public. So I'll give a quick summary of what a general plan is, and then I'll dive into the changes that we've made since that workshop. So a general plan, it's a foundational policy document for the city, and it's organized as a collection of elements The city's existing general plan was last comprehensively updated in 2016. The mobility element contains goals, policies, and implementation programs related to the city's circulation and transportation network, and it reflects the city's commitment to a safe, connected, efficient, multimodal transportation system. The reasons for amending the mobility element primarily are to incorporate the circulation geometries and roadway classifications in the Washington Realized Sustainable Community Strategy, the Pioneer Bluff Stonelock Reuse Master Plan, also include the Broadway Bridge and the C Street Bridge. And now that we have the document open, we are also updating the policies and implementation programs to better reflect city goals and policies, and also state law. So a summary of the changes that have been made, and this is also in the memo that you should have received. There were a few policies that were updated based on the comment on June 5th. And it's to the policies regarding cycling. So really beefing those policies up, more protection for cyclists when they're we're trying to increase pedestrian and cyclist transportation in the city. So really, big picture, this update is a really good step forward for the general plan for the city. It includes more complete street policies. It's a lot more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. Has policies in there about reducing VMT. There's a new policy on Vision Zero, reducing traffic fatalities in the city to zero by 2040. So it's a big step forward. So a few of the comments that were raised at the June 15th meeting, I want to get into those a little bit. One of them was about traffic speed and why can't we reduce the speed? The functional classifications identifies typical speeds per type of road. And there was a bill signed by the governor a few years ago that does provide more flexibility. Typically, before that, it was based on a traffic speed survey in the 85th percentile of that. But if you have a safety corridor that you've identified, you can reduce it more than that. And the city, we are actually working on preparing a Vision Zero comprehensive safety action plan, and that's just getting going. We had an RFP out for consultants on that last month, and we're reviewing the consultants, and we'll be taking that to City Council here shortly. But that's something that we'll be getting input on next year, is that comprehensive safety action plan. And once we have that, we can really identify more granular what streets would be lower traffic speeds. We also made edits to the proposed amendments to the Drever Street based on the feedback that the bike lane width was not wide enough. The old cross-section had a 5-foot width, and that's been bumped up to 6 feet. And talking to our supervising transportation planner, if you go any wider than that, it really resembles more of a vehicular travel lane, and people start parking in it or driving through it. So 6 feet really is the recommended maximum width. And that's also based off of the North American Transportation Organization. They have an urban bikeway design guidelines. So we looked through that, and that's where that came from. So to summarize the edits, since June 15th, there are 2 policies that have been amended, as shown in the memo, also an implementation program, and then the amendment to the Drever Street cross-section. So additionally, there is a supplemental environmental impact report. That's why your agenda packet is so thick. So that is supplementing the 2016 general plan EIR for these proposed changes. It really looks into the changes that are proposed, and there are no new or more significant impacts compared to what was analyzed in that EIR. That went through a 45-day public comment period, mid-April through the end of September. We received 1 comment from the public, and that is addressed in the FEIR, which is provided as an attachment to your agenda report. Additionally, there was a change to one of the cultural resource mitigation measures. So that is also identified in the FEIR. So tonight, we're recommending the commission pass the recommended action, and these amendments would go before the city council if recommended tonight, likely December, the December meeting. That concludes my report. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And then before we go to questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. And do we have any comments on this item?
Yes, we do. Gage Marchini.
That's actually the proper pronunciation. But my family says Marcini, but it is, if we were in Italy, I'm sure they would not appreciate that pronunciation. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Gage Marchini. I'm an attorney with the law firm Abbott and Kinderman. We represent the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association in relation to their temple project, which is set to be constructed at a City of Dharma Realm location, which is just across the street from where we are right now. I appreciate the opportunity to come share some of our comments regarding the mobility element update. But before we get into those comments, I just want to thank all of you for your time, and particularly thank the city staff for all of their professionalism and willingness to meet with us as we work through all the details of this temple project. In particular, David Tilley and Seamus Laffey, we appreciate all of your time. Now, regarding the mobility plan, the mobility element update to the general plan, we appreciate the commission and staff's acknowledgement of the presence of our religious institution and its relation to the need for unified circulation and mobility. However, if you turn to page 8 of attachment 1, this is the policy document update to the general plan. You'll see that on the map, there's only one alternative that's included with the mobility element update. And that's an alternative that would require the Drever, you'll see the note down at the bottom. The connection Drever Street North to Merkley Avenue is an alternative alignment. The primary connection to this area would be through the El Rancho Court to Power Bridge Gateway. Now, this alternative alignment is the only one included in the update, and this particular road would require the city to condemn a segment of land through the Dharma Realm property in order to construct a road. This would not only affect Dharma Realm's religious practices on their property, but it would separate the planned mountain gate and intersect the Sky Bridge that is the entrance to the new temple project. We've previously walked the site with city staff and explained to them the areas and appreciated that they understood how that proposed road would interfere with Dharma Realm's use of the site. And while we were on that site visit, an alternative was discussed, an alternative to the road, which would allow the Drever Street extension to end in a cul-de-sac before it would bisect the Dharma Realm property and allow the Dharma Realm property and the temple project to remain undisturbed. And in recognition of these concerns, we respectfully request that the commission direct staff, city staff, to remove the alternative from the proposed update and amendment to the general plan, or in the alternative, excuse me, if I could just wrap up, or in the alternative, annotate the note to specify that this alternative wouldn't be sought while the impacted property was still occupied by a religious institution. Thank you so much for your time, and we are here if you have any questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no additional requests to speak on item 5.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing and then bring it back to the commission for questions and deliberation.
I'm a visual learner, and I couldn't identify the page number and map quick enough. If city staff could just bring that up on the screen and kind of assist.
Yeah, and if you could walk us through your response to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the circulation diagram. It's page 17. If you have the agenda report pulled up, the 555-page document, it's page 17. So it's the map of the city's circulation road network. Fortunately, I don't have something that's zoomed in for the specific site that we can pull up on there. But I can describe it for you. So Drever Street, if you zoom in to where Drever Street is, this is within the Bridge District. There is a dashed line that north of Tower Bridge Gateway that connects into Merkley Avenue. So essentially, this would be the road continuing north. There'd be an intersection and then going into Merkley Avenue. So some backstory on this is the city does have a pending development application for the Dharma Realm temple project. They are proposing a new temple building on the project site, and that will be going before the commission sometime next year. We're doing a CEQA document for that project. But specific to the general plan, this is a policy level document. We have lots of roads shown going through properties where there's existing buildings or properties that have not been developed yet. So we don't have specific carve-outs in the general plan for each property where there's a road going through it. For example, the Pioneer Bluff District, you notice there's a lot of roads going through industrial properties that already, they have businesses there, industrial businesses operating. So this is the same case for the Bridge District. When the opportunity arises through a development project or later on, the city would evaluate the road at that time. The reason why it's shown as a dashed line is this was originally the primary alignment. The Pioneer Bluff and Stonelock Reuse Master Plan showed this as the primary way to get through the property. It's the most ideal for cyclists, pedestrians driving. It's the most ideal to get to the transit center, and it's an alternative to the Jefferson Boulevard alignment, or Jefferson Boulevard, which is a busy arterial road. We discussed this with the applicant and their attorneys, and we came up with an alternative, which is to push El Rancho Court and have that connect the Tower Bridge Gateway. So that's why it's shown as a dashed line. It's an alternative alignment. So in the future, this is a general plan, long term. Should that property not be owned by this organization or used by this organization, we still want to have the opportunity to get that road in there because it is the most optimal route. I think that's a high-level summary of it.
Is El Rancho Court on this map?
It is, but it's not labeled.
Okay.
Tanya, are you able to put up that map on the screen from the report? We're really trying to zero in on a small portion of the city.
Yeah, page 17.
El Rancho Court's a very short segment of road on the west side of Dharma Realm property, kind of along the side of the, I believe it's River City Apostolic Church there, if I'm not mistaken. So we
You zoom into City Hall.
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson also has a question.
Let me. So, if, am I correct to understand that the church is currently anticipating a new development on that property? Is something being built now, or is it currently there that you have it?
So there's an existing, it's an existing facility. It has been used as a Buddhist temple for 30 years or so.
Yes.
But the city has a pending development application. We've been working on it for a few years now. That the CEQA document is being worked on right now for a new temple building to be roughly in the middle of the property, 90 feet tall. That's likely.
Has the city given approval of the new development under the current general plan?
Not yet. It's going to be going before the Planning Commission next year.
And if we approve this general plan, what complications does that create for the developer, for the owner?
One of the findings that you need to make is that it's consistent with the general plan. So that is the analysis that we would have to, that's a project specific that we would need to discuss then. But we show the primary alignment as being through El Rancho Court, and that's what we communicated to the applicant, is that we're not going to be requiring this road going right through the middle of their property.
So they can fully anticipate that if they proceed with this project, the city is not going to come and create a problem for them 20, 30 years down the road. I mean, under the current plan. I mean, if we approve the full plan.
If we approve that development project and it got built, if the city were to, I have to turn to the city attorney, but it'd be very, very costly for the city, and I don't see the city council wanting to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
at the same time, we can't foreclose on this option for future city councils, 10, 15, 20 years, down the road from now, where, we don't know what life will be like at that point in time. So, but Mr. City Attorney, please.
However, if in fact the applicant is, I'm trying to determine if we're going to discourage the development of the new facility by not offering the amendment that they're requesting.
So again, to kind of focus in on what we're looking at here, this is a general plan document, and on this document, we show roadway alignments going through numerous properties that are currently developed, undeveloped, where property owners might have plans. The goal of this document is to provide a whole overview of what would be the ideal roadway alignment for the city as staff has identified it. And as Seamus said, the reason we show the dashed line is that because that's really the ideal alignment for this road. In this case, we've already worked with this applicant to move the alignment over to the left, as you see up on the screen now, to accommodate their project. The reason we're still looking to list this dashed line as an alternative is just to preserve options for future councils, as David just explained, because that dashed alignment really does represent the ideal roadway alignment for that part of town.
So is El Rancho the one the dash line goes into?
Yes, it's the one that it runs into there, that runs perpendicular to Merkley.
Oh,
Yeah, it runs north to south from West Capitol Avenue down to Tower Bridge Gateway.
I'm going to allow our supervising transportation planner to weigh in on this a little further, please.
Hi, Jason McCoy, Supervising Transportation Planner. I manage the transportation group for the city. There's a whole host of things that are going on here that may not be reflected in the general plan because, again, general plan is very general. But there are a number of different projects that are moving forward that generally are in this area. One is we've applied for, I believe it's about $6 million that we applied for a grant to study what we call the spaghetti straps, the freeway overpasses and everything that's crisscrossing between Tower Bridge Gateway and Jefferson. So as you know, that there's vacant property to the south. There's old freeway on-ramps that are no longer applicable anymore because the city has purchased what was the old freeway leading to Tower Bridge. And our goal is to reconnect the community where it was bisected by the freeway. So specifically, the grant that we applied for is called Reconnecting Communities from the federal government. And what that specifically is supposed to do is look at freeway corridors that bisected the community, chopped it in half, and find a way of bringing the city back together and right some of the wrongs, including equity wrongs that resulted as that. If you take a look at the maps that we have for disadvantaged community zones, Jefferson Boulevard, which was a state highway at one time, cut the community in half, and you've got one half of it is a disadvantaged community. The other half, where the Bridge District is an advantaged community. It's more economically affluent. So we're trying to find ways of bringing our roads back together that were once bisected. So that's one thing that's going on here. So part of what we wanted to do early on, I think it was in 2016, the Pioneer Bluff reuse master plan envisioned what you see, that dash line going through there was actually part of the city council approved plan to have that road go through. The general plan is just catching up to some of the planning documents that have already moved forward. So with regard to that area, we're trying to take a look at all of these highway, freeway areas and reduce some of the impact on that. The other is the development to the south is pretty much blocked off from development, which right now it's supposed to be a mixed use, higher density, and that's where Draver is supposed to be connecting through at Ballpark. Right now, there's just no way because it's isolated. So what we're hoping to do is our Reconnecting Communities grant application will be used to take a look at all of these roadways, the developments around it, and find the best way to kind of connect everything back together and create a better urban environment, better economic development. In addition to that, most people know that the light rail extension is still happening from Sacramento into West Sacramento. We do have a schedule right now for 2029 to have that segment completed from Sacramento Valley Station to Sutter Health Park, but that's not going to be the end of it. So I am going to be kicking off a study early 2024, probably going to be releasing the RFP for that either in December or in January to get consultants on board to look at where is it going to go next? Where are we taking the light rail? Since the mid-90s, we've had plans to go to Southport Town Center. That's why the city owns that huge swath of land behind the town center. That's why we own Clarksburg Branch Line Trail and the total around 130 feet going all the way across, and the city owns the rail bridge over the barge canal because all of our plans are to bring light rail down into Southport. As part of that, we need to understand where is it going to go through the Bridge District. So there's two alternatives. One is to go behind Dharma Realm on Tower Bridge Gateway, not yet Cabaldon Parkway, Tower Bridge Gateway, and then cut down Draver and then connect to the existing railroad corridor. The other is to go down 5th Street on the other side of the ballpark and then connect to what is now the UP rail yard and then continue on south. So there's two alignments. Part of why we really wanted to connect this is because we have our transit center up there. We have the community center, we have the library. And this would be a direct connection to the future light rail station on Tower Bridge Gateway, should that be the alternative that's selected. So we have a lot of irons in the fire here. As you know, it's West Sacramento, so we do things very quickly and try to do things very comprehensively. So that hopefully provides a little bit of context that it's It's not just one project. There's about 6 or 7 projects that are all happening, all in this area. So it's a very important area and a place that we really need to see connectivity reestablished.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
No problem.
Any questions for Mr. McCoy? You can't get away that quickly.
I tried.
Well, maybe you can.
Well, wait a minute. I have another subject that I've got buried down, but it's a transportation issue.
Yeah, well, he'll still be available, but do
Yeah.
you have any questions
Oh, yeah,
on this part?
I'm here all night.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
So based on Mr. McCoy's explanation, it sounds like alternative solutions with Dharma in mind were already presented to the applicant. So I would just now ask the applicant, based on the additional awareness we've received as commissioners, are you still in opposition of the general plan moving forward as is, with the understanding that there is fluidity in how eventually councils today and future councils may decide on incorporating the reconnectivity as well as preserving the integrity of your new build for Dharma?
I'm going to reopen the public hearing for this response.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. And in response, I'll bring it back to what our request here actually is. And when we walked the property with city staff, we discussed many alternatives. However, the one that made its way into the plan amendment is the one that would bisect the property through the Dharma realm religious institution. And what we heard from the supervising planning commissioner planning director who just spoke, is that there's still studies that need to be done in this area about how best to make circulation in this area improve to connect the community. What we're asking is that this acknowledgement of Dharma Realm's presence here be noted. If the alternative can't be removed, we just ask that it be noted that the city doesn't intend to condemn through the middle of their property while there's a religious institution practicing here. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. And does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask while I'm here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delgado, did you have a question for staff or a comment?
More of a comment. I was thinking back to the I-3 bridge replacement and everything that happened with the Sanchez Duran property. So having gone through that experience with them and seeing kind of the, not necessarily delays, but some of the additional work that had to be done to ensure that plans weren't going to negatively impact people residing within the city of West Sacramento, I'd like to see, or I would like us to take into account that there is a religious institution practicing here, and that's, even though it is within the center of the city, I think that's quite important, and we should be willing to hear them out and follow through with making a guarantee that we will not bisect their property while they're practicing their religion there.
Do you mind if I respond to that? These are two very different planning documents. So with the property that you just mentioned, we had several community engagement and outreach workshops. We had provided notification. We brought this to the Transportation Commission. We also provided additional notices after that. We took it to the city council. We took public comment. We brought it back to the city council, and it was approved by the city council 2 years before it was ever mentioned that there was any issue with that piece of property. So that was an environmental impact report, and it was also PAED and final design for a bridge project. That's a very specific document. and a very specific plan. This is the general plan. So all throughout the city, there's a lot of properties that have a lot of lines over them. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to occur. It means that that is the vision for the city. So at this point, that vision remains. The city still wants to put a connection through there connecting Merkley, Draver with Tower Bridge Gateway. So whether that vision happens now, happens in 20 years from now, that's still going to be a vision. That's very different from an actual document where we're actually engineering roadways and connections for a bridge. So I want to make sure that that's very clear that this is a general plan and a general vision for a city, not a specific action to develop.
Yeah, and so if the city were to move forward with any of these streets, there would be studies and public noticing and opportunities for comment and such.
That's correct. So when a development proposal moves forward on the Dharma Realm property, what happens is, or any property for that matter, it has to go to the fire department, police department, planning. All of the different departments have to review that to say, this is consistent with the general plan or not. This is consistent with the needs of the community. This meets emergency response time or it does not. So all of these development issues have to occur when there's actually a specific proposal that's in front of the city. Whether or not that's in the general plan needs to be taken into consideration by the Planning Commission and by the City Council. But it's regardless, there's the vision that happens by the city. And so even if the Planning Commission here said, well, there's a religious institution in that spot, it doesn't matter if it's a religious institution or not. It's a property. It could be a daycare center that has a road there. It could be a grocery store that has a road there. It could be, somebody's property that, regardless of the use, that is the vision for the city. And we'll deal with it when it comes time for a development proposal to move forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions on this item, or on this part of the item? I'll start from my right. Commissioner Olivares, anything on, any questions or comments on the package generally?
If I understand Mr. McCoy's follow-up explanation, there's an additional process once the Dharma project actually comes back before us, separate and apart from whatever action we take today. Hypothetically speaking, we motion to approve the general plan, given the dialogue that's already been had with the applicant and the accommodations we've discussed and made to date, still leaves room for opportunity for them to come back and still have to go through the formal process, which are all the steps in which the city, the fire department, the whole gamut approves or disapproves this newer project. But it's not with the thought in mind that the city is not flexible or open to the understanding that the site won't be split. Okay. So then I have to go back to the applicant and ask, what is your concern with that? Because I think that I've heard enough for me to be comfortable on how I want to motion on this, given that you will have another opportunity come back before us and City Council on your next steps.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to speak again. Our concern is this. Our concern is exactly what we just heard. They're looking at this as just another piece of property, but the Dharma Realm Buddhist Association looks at this as their temple project, and a location where they want to expand their existing temple, build this new structure, and create a cultural hub right here in West Sacramento. And one other thing that I will note is I'm appreciative that there's so much development going on in the city and so much growth that this area has received over the past decades. But on this plan, on this map, there's only one alternative on the entire thing. And that alternative is the road that the planning directors are saying is the ideal road to connect the city that they want to put right through the center of the property. And if their intention is not to do that right now, but instead for it to be something that's revisited decades into the future, we just ask that that's noted. Thank you.
I'd like to point out for the commission's benefit that the exhibit that you have before you tonight for your consideration does represent a concession to the Dharma Realm property in that it is shown as an alternative rather than the primary route, which from a geometric standpoint, going in a nice straight line was always preferable. So this is not where we started on this effort, but this is where we have wound up after having some discussions with the Dharma Realm personnel as well as their legal counsel at this gentleman's firm. So we have already made a concession here, and we are already now designing the intersection at Drever, the extension of Drever and Tower Bridge Gateway to connect into El Rancho Port on the north side. We expect to have some engineered level designs probably January for that. So this does represent a compromise that we are recommending that the Planning Commission move forward for ultimate consideration by the City Council.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Tilley. I was going to ask if that was why it was the only alternative, because it was the concession on this issue. So does that answer your question, Commissioner Olivares? Commissioner Delgado, any comments, questions on this?
Nothing.
Commissioner Anderson.
Well, I'm in a unique situation because, of course, I was not at the June meeting, but so I might bring up some things that are loose ends in my head that seem a little perhaps late to the game, but let me throw them out there. With regard to the transportation issues, I was looking for in the document something that would recognize the need for integration and overlap. And let me give you an example. I have a granddaughter living with us who takes VIA and goes to Consumnes College via transit. But VIA doesn't go to where the transit is. It goes to the bridge. Then she walks the 7 or 8, perhaps 9 blocks across the bridge to the transit. Yeah. Why cannot they have VIA just make a little more time? And it's so artificial.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Anderson, Jason has some news for you on that front.
Might have some news. So, yes, but I mean, ultimately, it would be great for VIA to go over the bridge. The requirement that we had was because this is a city project, city facility, city monies, we have to stay in the city because we can't go into another jurisdiction. There was a couple of things that we were trying to avoid. One is that SAC-RT is the transit district over the river. YTD is the transit district on our side. So I have been working for many years to negotiate a way to move forward with that. We think we have reached an agreement. SAC-RT has agreed, and the folks at VIA who provide the service have agreed. We have not yet gotten agreement from YTD to allow us to do that.
I'm not sure. Help me with YOLO transportation, is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
So we were almost there. In fact, we have a staff report, and we were getting ready to go to council for approval, but we've had to reel that back.
If it will be of any help to you, be aware that I use an awful lot of fuel that burns up, so I go pick her up. In fact, I could pick her up tonight because I don't want her walking across the bridge at this time of day.
Well, we think we're almost there. We had feedback from Autumn Bernstein, the executive director at YTD, that she was in favor of the VIA vehicles going into downtown Sacramento, just not having any of SAC-RT's vehicles come into our city.
I'm sorry, what coming into our city?
SAC-RT is their on-demand rideshare is also operated by VIA. So what we were trying to do is economies of scale, reduce our overall costs, and be able to bring folks into downtown Sacramento, at least to Kaiser Hospital, Sac Valley Station. I think the other spot was N and 8th Street, which is near the light rail transfer area to go toward Cosumnes River College.
Well, I
So
hadn't
we were
planned on
very
such
close.
a long, lengthy answer, but let me simply say that I would encourage that perhaps at the point where it gets to the city council, that some effort to work within the general plan, an integration issue, just as you're describing. I think we need to highlight that as an effort rather than these artificial boundaries that make it so they don't work nearly as well.
I wholly agree with you. We're almost there, at least with the VIA.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
The other question I had is regarding the first floor riverfront all being retail. Now, this is another bailiwick, so Did you take into consideration, or first of all, when we describe an entire area mandatory on the riverfront, is that correct?
So the existing specific plan requires retail along Riverfront Street, essentially from Tower Bridge Gateway to the barn. With this effort, we are not amending any of that. We're only incorporating the roads that are proposed in the general plan. We're incorporating those into the Bridge District specific plan. We're not changing any of the other components of the specific plan.
As tastes and preferences change, and as we have observed in the city, some of the vacancies of retail area, what flexibility would a developer have if there is some desire on their part to put, some other alternative? Because it's very specific to the retail in here.
Yeah, so again, we're not suggesting any amendments from the existing plan for the retail, but the Bridge District is set up where all the retail really is along Riverfront Street. We want it to be viable, and if you have it pockets here and there, when this plan was created, it was determined that it'd be best to have it all along Riverfront Street. So we are probably going to be doing a more comprehensive update to that specific plan in coordination with the property owners in a few years. But if a development were to be proposed in that section where the specific plan requires retail, and they did not have retail, there is a provision that allows for a minor deviation from the specific plan with zoning administrator approval, and that's our director, or Mr. Tilley. So there is an avenue for not having retail, but there needs to be a strong justification for why they can't have it. And there are other ways to activate the street besides retail. You can have, if you have a multifamily, you can have your leasing office, your fitness area, there are other ways of activating it besides just the retail.
Well, that's all I needed to know. The other final question is regarding this, almost tongue-in-cheek. We need more places in some of that rather tight area to figure out how the Amazon trucks are going to get in. So leave it at that.
Commissioner Wong, any questions or comments?
Just a comment. I note that the temple is there, and I see the dotted line, but I think the overall focus and general plan is to tie to transportation, have the RT come to us. So I think that's just like the overall plan that I'm seeing.
Any further deliberation or questions for any other commissioners?
Yeah, sorry, I do have one question. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the updates to River Street with regards to the bike lanes. I appreciate that they're going to be a standard size throughout that project or throughout that development, and that you've gone a bit wider as opposed to narrowing down the other one. That I think that's a good step. The other thing I was curious about, does that 6 feet, would that include gutters and drains and stuff like that? Because I noticed I think it was the streetscape standards for the Bridge District. It mentioned a specific type of grates to allow bikes to roll over those.
Yeah, and we're gonna pull up the cross-section here. So that bike lane on the top, that's from Tower Bridge to Ballpark Drive. That is where it's curb adjacent, and that's where it's 8 feet. It incorporates the 2 feet for the bollards. But yeah, the Bridge District specific plan has a lot of unique requirements to that district to make it more walkable and bikeable. So that, like you mentioned, that's one of them.
Maybe this is just a more general question about cycling throughout the city, and also as it pertains to the Bridge District. But when we talk about the 8 feet, that obviously includes the barriers or bollards, whatever goes in there. So that's 1 to 2 feet probably. And then the rest would be essentially bike lane, 6 feet of bike lane in terms of width.
Yeah, so for the top cross-section, it'd be a 6-foot bike lane with a
Mhm.
2-foot buffer.
So what I'm looking for clarification on is when we include the 6 feet of bike lane, are we including everything from the curb to the bollard or the barrier?
Yeah,
So that includes drains, that includes the gutter, everything.
correct.
Okay.
Thank you. And I thank you for clarifying the, the width of the bike lane being 6 feet. That makes a lot of sense if we don't want to encourage cars to go that way and try to pass. Just a quick question for Mr. McCoy. On the study you mentioned that's going forward on the freeway, the interconnection, is that item 14 in the?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
We submitted that application, I think it was due roughly 3 weeks ago. So hopefully we'll get notice that we received the funding. If we don't, then we're just going to continue applying for other funding pools to try to address the issue. I mean, the freeway, the bridge, that's the on-ramp from Tower Bridge Gateway onto the freeway, is in a state of disrepair. The large overpasses that come down into Tower Bridge Gateway drop down right at the spot where we're looking to put that roadway. We're hoping that we can find a little bit of wiggle room when we redo some of the planning efforts there to take out the on-ramps that are there and expand some of the development potential and provide better connectivity. And you'll see the LRT BRT master plan come out next year that's going to explore a little bit more the Baldwin Parkway and 5th Street and how to get light rail into Southport.
Yeah, the Mobility Implementation Program 14 is in regards to that holistic plan for that area. So yeah, Mobility Element Implementation Program 14.
Oh, and so for these items in here, are they subject to funding still, or some of them are funded, some of them aren't in our implementation plan?
Yeah, so again, the implementation programs it's a general plan. So you put it in there in the hopes that down the road you can get funding.
Okay, yeah. But this one we do have.
And having the stuff in these foundational elements definitely helps tee us up for grants and other things like that when we can point to, these formal policies rather than, just being a cool idea that, we dreamed up one day. So this is very much the foundation for everything going forward.
And thank you, staff, for all your work on this. This is a good step to move us forward on our climate action plan goals and implementing VMT reduction and all of that. So, and it's good to hear all the transportation updates from Mr. McCoy. If no further deliberation on this, do we have a motion from one of the commissioners? Or we can also continue this, or
No.
if there's any questions, we can bring.
I feel uncomfortable doing it because I'm an alternate. I would like to move the staff recommendation, and I would not wish to amend it with regard to the temple site. I think that the issues have been clarified by staff sufficient for me. So I move the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Anderson.
Second.
I'll second that.
Second from Commissioner Wong.
Commissioner Olivares,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong,
Aye.
Commissioner Delgado,
Aye.
Chair Sablon.
Aye. Thank you. With that, the staff recommended action passes, and this is going to go to council.
Yes, City
Next.
Council will take final action on this project.
May I make just one comment? I've looked at these things before, and I have to say, it's beautiful. I really like it. So, I'll just say that. The staff's done a great.
Okay, with that, we have moving to item 6, public hearing regarding proposed zoning text amendments. Mr. Berumen's doing this.
Good evening, Chair, and all of the members of the Planning Commission. My name is Daniel Berumen, Senior Planner for the city. I'm here tonight to present on the annual zoning code amendments. The zoning code requires regular updates to keep up with ongoing changes in the city. These amendments or changes are often spurred on by existing regulations that are no longer applicable, require updating due to changes in state law, or that require process improvements based on input from staff and or the public. A list of the proposed sections to be amended in Title 17 zoning can be seen here. There are 14 proposed sections to be amended. I will provide a brief summary of the notable amendments. So based on Planning Commission feedback at the October 5th Planning Commission workshop, staff was instructed to make certain changes, notably to propose amendments to common open space standards in commercial and mixed-use zones, emergency standby generators, and interim uses. Also, based on input from the Community Development Director, staff removed proposed definitions for convenience markets, smoke shops, and liquor stores, as these will be further studied in a subsequent meeting that specifically focuses on how they potentially will be regulated moving forward. Beginning with amendments to tables. Table 17.09.020 has 2 amendments, beginning with short-term rentals in commercial and mixed-use zones. This is a cleanup to make it clear that short-term rentals are not only permitted in residential zones by right, but are also intended to be allowed by right in mixed-use zones based on the commercial nature of these uses. Moving on to common open space standards. This cleanup is intended to allow more flexibility with the use of common open space, since 100 square feet has been seen as an obstacle to implement recent mixed-use projects. Staff recommends 75 square feet per unit of minimum open space to allow more reasonable regulation for compliance. This amendment was based on input from the Planning Commission on October 5th, in which staff originally proposed 50 square feet per unit of common open space. Moving on to amendments to chapter sections. Chapter 17.22130, screening. The amendment is intended to promote screening materials to be of a consistent aesthetic quality to avoid unappealing materials being used. So screening materials shall not be of a material that obstructs significant visibility. This came to our attention from our code enforcement division based on some of their field observations. Moving on to 17.22060, fences, walls, and hedges in non-residential zones for electric fences. So Title 15, building and construction, mandates that electric fences be of a minimum 8 feet in height, while Title 17 states that the height of fences, walls, and hedges in Non-residential zones shall not exceed 7 feet. So this is a conflict. The exception is added to ensure both Title 15 and Title 17 of the municipal code are in alignment with when regulating the height of electric fences. So we will allow them to be a minimum of 8 feet in height. Several new definitions are proposed, including emergency standby generators. This proposed definition is intended to describe an accessory use that we see a lot more in residential zones. There's also an amendment to Chapter 17.08040, supplemental regulations, and is intended to regulate the placement of emergency generators in these zones. The placement of emergency generators shall follow similar guidelines to other accessory structures like pool, spa, filter, heating, and maintenance equipment. So based on input from the Planning Commission on October 5th, staff now recommends a setback distance of 10 feet rather than 5 feet of any dwelling unit on an adjacent parcel. Moving on to interim uses. This is a new section that is being proposed to be added to Chapter 17.38. An interim use is defined as a zoning mechanism that allows a property owner to use their land for a limited period of time for land use not otherwise permitted by the underlying zoning. The city shall have ultimate discretion over these types of uses proposed to be allowed on a subject site, and may impose conditions of approval to regulate dates, hours of operation, etc. The length of time for a use permit would be determined by the staff with final approval by the Planning Commission. Staff suggests 3 to 5 years, but this could be amended. Interim uses should be limited in zones where commercial uses take place, which is why they are proposed to only be allowed in non-residential zones, the commercial mixed-use zones, and the employment zones. The process to obtain an interim use shall follow the same requirements of a conditional use permit. Findings must be met to ensure that these uses are compatible and will not hinder the long-term vision of the area. Note, there is a correction to the staff report and ordinance, and that's an update to the language to reflect the public notice and hearing section 17.38050, replacing section 17.38030. So this is more of an accurate depiction of what we want to have the language be. And just in terms of next steps, if amendments to the code are proposed tonight, staff intends to take the item for City Council review and approval in December. Since the amendment process requires an ordinance, the item requires 2 readings with the City Council. This concludes my presentation on zoning code amendments. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Any questions? Oh, well, before we go to questions, I'm going to open the public hearing. And Tanya, do we have any commenters on this?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any questions and deliberation. Start to my left, Commissioner Wong.
I appreciate that you changed the open space to 75, but I still feel that it should be 100. And thank you for the details about the interim use permit and taking our recommendation.
Commissioner Anderson?
Could you give me a clarification on the impact this will have on the mini homes, the ones that discussed at a previous planning commission meeting by members of the community?
With respect to which section?
I think he's referring to the tiny home on wheels.
Yeah. Homes.
I'm actually taking a very similar presentation to the City Council at their next meeting on that to get some overall direction on where the City Council wants to go related to tiny home on wheels. So if the council is ultimately open to making some changes, I'll be back here in front of the commission on that particular topic.
All right.
Commissioner Delgado?
I noticed that we're still going all in on the short-term rentals in commercial and mixed-use zones. Are we legally required to do that? Or is that just something that the staff decided needed clarification?
Yeah, I think it's more of a staff determination. We're not legally required, but I think it's because of the commercial nature of these uses, we thought it would be prudent to include them in the commercial and mixed-use zones.
Okay, I continue to disagree with that. But I appreciate you listening or taking count commission's recommendations on some of the other items.
Commissioner Alvarez?
No questions. Thank you, staff.
Similar to Commissioner Wong, what's the rationale for going to 75? Thank you for increasing it, but, so we have 100, we went to 50, and now we're at 75, and what's the rationale to land at 75? And when we're hearing that people can't develop because of this requirement, it's preventing development, is that one developer, or is this one instance? Is it happening multiple times? Would 75 even help them? So these are.
Yeah, from staff's discussion with other community development staff, it seems like the 100 square feet seems to be an impediment, and so we landed on something sort of kind of met halfway and said, let's see if 75 square feet might be kind of fitting that. It's certainly up to the commission to make that determination. We're just seeing that it's been seen at least more than one project. I don't know how many exactly, but it has been feedback from other staff that we want to make sure that we're important.
Okay. Yeah, I think where I stand on that is I don't want to discourage development, but I want to have a supported, like, this is the right reduction, and and is that going to help developers that have walked away because of the requirement at 100? So we don't want to make changes just to try to guess at what needs to accommodate developers.
Can I follow up on that just to make sure I'm understanding it? I thought I did at the last meeting, but the example here would be sorry. So we're looking at 150 units, correct? In this example given here on the
I think that if I remember from the workshop, I think there was like I believe it was 100 units that we were looking at, and that would be equate to about 10,000 square feet.
Right.
Of open space.
So with this one, we're talking about common space being, for like a example, an interior courtyards or park within the unit or something like that, right?
Correct.
So looking at the example given here, 150 units, 75 square feet per unit required would give us essentially a quarter acre or one single family lot of public space for children to play in or turn into a park, barbecues, etc. Correct?
Yeah, if we're using the example of 100 units, it'd be equate to about 7,500 square feet.
Right. Okay. So it's not like we're talking about forcing people into these tiny little spaces. We're talking about cumulatively the amount of public space that needs to be provided to people living there. So I understand why that would be an impediment to development, and also how that does take up space from potential additional units or additional housing. So I think this seems to be in my opinion, it seems to be a good compromise, because when you look at it as a whole, assuming that they're not just putting public spaces in random spots that people can't use, which I don't think would necessarily happen, that does seem like a decent amount of open space or free space within a multi-unit accommodation.
Right, and obviously to note, this is the minimum. So developers can provide more common open space if they so choose, and we just want to make sure that's noted.
Do you know what the requirements are for other, like our neighboring cities?
I do not. I did not do that research specific to other jurisdictions here.
And then I had a few comments on the interim use. I guess just a general, if there's language in 17.380.080 of will, and I think we want to say shall, as it's a requirement, right? And then for the interim use time set 3 to 5 years, I think if we don't need unless staff has a rationale for setting the lower end, if 5 years is the maximum, if we could do it as 5 years as the maximum and not have a lower end in case we have a use that needs it for 2 years, and you know, if we want to promote the use there and it's consistent with the other requirements in the section, I think that gives us more flexibility.
And well noted, we can certainly look at changing let's say the minimum amount of time for interim use. We're flexible with that's what the commission.
Okay. And then, yeah, and I think the same with the extensions. I think if that's changed to shall, I think that will fix it seems a little, as it's worded now, it seems like, it sounds like we will grant an extension, even the way it's worded. So, yeah, with those corrections.
We can certainly make amendments to say may grant an extension. That's.
Should the commission decide to move this item tonight, we would ask that your motion include that direction to make those types of cleanup.
Okay. And any further deliberation, comments, questions? Traditionally, I doesn't make a motion, so
This is the occasion when you
yeah.
should.
You certainly can. However, you're right, it has been tradition that somebody else would make a motion and the chair would typically vote last, but that's just a practice. It's not a requirement.
A motion to have the chair make a motion. I think we need a second on that, Commissioners. I guess, are the other commissioners comfortable with those proposed changes to the interim uses?
Yeah, sorry, is that replacing in paragraph, let's see, the third paragraph in section 14, replacing the use will with the use shall, an extension shall require, and only one extension may be granted?
So, yeah, and then there's language in here that the use will cease operation and the site in which the interim use was operating will be returned to its original condition. So changing that to shall, so that it's once that period ends, and with the same and the range of time of the interim use, having it at a maximum of 5 years instead of also setting the lower range.
And I'm sorry, Chair, there's one more. I think I mentioned it in the presentation. Section 17.38050. There's a correction there. Instead of a review authority, it should be public hearing and notice, I believe.
Let's see, I think Commissioner Delgado, are you digesting that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still trying to find 17.38050.
Okay, so on here it's 7.380.30. That one should be 17.380.050.
Okay, got got it.
So that would be the correction there.
Okay. Um, okay, I'll make the motion that we accept staff recommendations on items 1, 2, and 3 with a note to clarify language in paragraph 17 that under interim uses, item 17.380-030 should be 17.380.050, and that we accept the chair's recommendation of replacing will with shall, and one extension may be granted. I usually mess these up. Does that cover it?
The maximum of 5 years? Commissioner
Oh,
Becerra.
right, sorry. And that we change the range of time from 3 to 5 years to no more than 5 years.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. So if there is an extension granted, can it exceed the 5 years? And is it for a maximum of another 5 years?
We should probably clarify, put that in there, because
Yeah.
I'm still recommending that the commission be conservative on this type of thing. As much as we're trying to work with property owners here, the reality of it is that when a use does get in there, it can be very difficult to get it out. So still trying to be conservative here. So we probably should put in a provision for a maximum term on the extension. 2 years, something to that effect, is what I would recommend.
And just one more thing, an extension would have to come back to the planning commission and be a public hearing. And so you would have ultimate discretion in terms of how much time you would allow. Presumably, it would be another interim use, so follow the same interim use process. And so we could certainly state that there's a limit of a certain amount of years, certainly not exceeding 5 years, if it's going to follow the same mechanism of an interim use. But it's certainly up to the commission's discretion.
Okay, so I think to address Commissioner Anderson's concern with having, no more than 5 years, because if extended, it would be, right? So I think if we put something in the range of time for the initial period for the, I guess, I think we would leave that to staff to figure out the precise language. If we can we do that, direct staff to?
Yeah, the direction could be to
Yeah.
staff to clarify how subsequent or how extensions would be handled in this language.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Commissioner Delgado's motion on there with that clarification.
Yeah, should I do that again then?
You don't need to go through that again.
Yeah.
I've got it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I just have a quick question, just to ensure everybody's comfortable with what goes on the public record of being approved. Could we just direct staff to go back and make the proposed edits and then bring that back before the commission at a future meeting? If folks don't feel comfortable approving today?
I think that would be a competing motion, or, do we have to dispose of this motion before we?
It's a question
Oh,
first.
Well, we
question.
haven't had
we
a
can't-
second
The
yet.
clarification
Yeah.
would be incorporated, and then it would be carried forward to the council, yeah. So we wouldn't be coming back with that clarification. We could certainly bring it back as an information item, language that we come up with.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. That makes sense.
This won't delay it then to go to the council, will it?
Correct. Yeah, you approve this as we've discussed in the motion right now, then it would not delay it. It would move forward to the council.
I'll second Commissioner Delgado's motion.
We have a second by Commissioner Alvarez.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Delgado.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong,
Aye.
Commissioner Olivares,
Aye.
Chair Sablon.
Aye. Okay, with that, this is going to move forward. Item 6 is approved. We have administrative function part 2. Item 7A, Commissioner Communications.
See you all in 2 weeks.
Okay, meeting adjourned.